What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo with Mike Golick Jr. That is me. With me, as always, Brandon Newman. Brandon, what's going on?
Oh, nothing much. Getting ready to be a hater because that's the way I've positioned myself on this podcast.
I can always tell the days Brandon comes in here after reading the comments on Apple Podcasts. It is without fail.
Yeah, guilty as we get ready and prepare and put the final bow on the show. You know, dive into the reviews. 5 stars. Brandon, do be a hater. Okay.
Do you dispute these claims?
I don't. Oh, it said Brandon, do be a hater. I thought of it as a call to action. Now that I'm reading it out loud, it's just a general comment.
Yeah, see, this is like an ink blot test for you as far as how you see the world, because if you were looking
Rorschach,
to be slighted, Rorschach, tomato, Rorschach. By the way, we're going to talk about fat bears today. It feels like Rorschach is some heinous combination of a bear and a shark that would go terribly wrong.
Oh, I was thinking maybe just like a Russian bear name.
I'm trying to think now if sharks make a noise.
Like,
you know?
Are you talking about if a tree falls in the woods?
No, but like genuinely, we think and hear all the time, whales make that high-pitched sound, dolphins squeak. Do sharks make a noise?
I think so. I think they have to, right? I mean, I'm not talking about the sonic ones, like bats. I'm talking about...
Yeah, not just like echolocation. Well, because with whales, you can hear their coo in the water, and with dolphins, they're real high-pitched. Seals make noise. Like, tons of oceanic life makes noise. I've just never even conceptualized a shark making noise.
Now you got me thinking, Mike, do gills get congested?
Oh, do you have to, like, blow your gills like you blow your nose?
Yeah, like, is there any complications there? Sinus infections underwater. What goes on?
This has gone off the rails quickly. If you want to prompt more philosophical discussions for Brandon Newman, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review Gojo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Also, check us out on the DraftKings YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that. Check us out on the Gojo with Mike Golick Jr. tab. Check out our interview with Lance Leipold from yesterday. We have a good one for you today here, and certainly one that is comparatively a lot more important. We've got plenty to get into with the Warriors and preseason NBA, which is already weirdly giving of headlines and cutting through the NFL noise in a way I couldn't have predicted. Part of that's probably because we have Thursday night football between the Colts and the Broncos, and that just seems like a real contender for a Factory of Sadness game. But we'll finish that off with Fat Bear Week and make it feel a lot better. But for a guest today, Jen Karson-Strauss is going to join us. She is the director of a new ESPN Plus and E60 piece about the scandal currently rocking, and really for the last year that has rocked the National Women's Soccer League. The E60 is called Truth Be Told, the fight for women's professional soccer, and we have seen the NWSL going back to the early fall of last year, rocked by scandal involving sexual coercion, harassment and improper treatment of the players in this league. We've seen a massive amount of overturn in there. And so Jen and her colleagues looked at really, I think, the powder keg moment for what we have seen that has continued in the independent report being released this week, looking into the league and the team's allegation, or the league and the team's treatment of players. So we'll get into a lot of that with her. Obviously, very sensitive subject matter, some graphic details, and so all things to be ready for as you get into that interview with Jen. But super informative. We'll kind of catch you more up on the timeline of that before we get into it. But Brandon, the timeline for NBA news seeping into the popular lexicon is already kind of wild. You mentioned this to me yesterday when we were talking on the phone, that you're slightly uncomfortable with how many headlines the NBA is already pulling in football season.
Yeah, it's not Christmas yet, Mike. And I understand that we're thirsty and we're excited, but like Chet Holmgren is not playing. Like, listen, I think we just all need to temper ourselves. John Morant is going crazy in the preseason. Like, I don't care. Like, I really don't care. So I'm upset that Twitter is caring.
Brandon, you're not doing a lot to dispel the Brandon do be a hater review. Sam, I love the diss for the NBA, though. It's not Christmas yet. What are you doing here? Like, people beef when you put up Christmas decorations before Thanksgiving, and you're like,
Yes.
man, it is October. Mind your business.
It is October. Yeah, how about y'all get ready for your little Halloween parties? And that's when I'll tap into NBA Twitter, when LeBron has a Halloween party at his house.
Well, you know what? Draymond felt like driving content to the podcast again because Wednesday, according to Shams over at The Athletic, the Warriors practice got blown up when Draymond Green and guard Jordan Poole got into an altercation. Green forcefully struck Poole, who they had both been chest to chest, jawing at each other for most of the practice. They're wondering about if there's going to be disciplinary action here for Draymond Green here. I saw, Chris Haynes over at Yahoo Sports said Draymond was apologetic in the aftermath of the altercation with Jordan Poole, but there was a buildup stemming from teammates noticing a change in Poole's behavior throughout camp, with the guard on the verge of securing a lucrative contract extension, league sources told Yahoo. Draymond Green and Jordan Poole have a history, but no players for the Golden State Warriors felt the incident was warranted. Some form of disciplinary action is expected. Now, for Draymond Green, wouldn't be the first time we know he's been disciplined for a fight with teammates. He famously got popped for his altercation with Kevin Durant that a lot of people looked at as the moment things went wrong and started to go south in that relationship. But Brandon, this seems like, once I saw Jordan Poole and Draymond Green have history, that to me looked like that was the report from Chris Haynes. Also, was that
I know
they have history.
I know that was the thing that jumped out to me. I was like, whoa, like that's like when they like sneak in a little thing. I was like, whoa, wait, what?
Well, so it seems like Jordan Poole just probably tried to make it clear he wasn't the one to try. Like, if I had to call it on this situation, Draymond Green is serial instigator. And on that team, he's got enough clout and tenure to go and be the guy where you have to accept Draymond's personality. He is going to push you. He's got the reputation for being that guy. And we know he's the loud one in the group. Steph and Clay, you're hardly ever going to hear from. Steph's going to do a little sleepy dance, and Clay's going to do awkward celebrations because I don't think he's very good at it, really, which...
Okay, I was going to say Steph leads by example.
Sure.
But yes, that's an example of it. But yes, they work together in tandem, and you're right. The Jordan Poole, Draymond Green have had history thing. Could be as simple as Jordan Poole is a Gen Zer. I don't know. He could be on the cusp of the bottom millennial. But you know what I mean? Like he could be just one of those guys that's just like, no, I'm not the one. You know, like there's a lot of people that you just like don't want to take the old sage. I mean, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has been an asshole out here for left and right to everyone, and you know now people are coming out. And, you know, LeBron just said like I really don't have a relationship with dude. So I think it really is just the older guy with all the rings, but not all the production, saying you listen to me, young dude. And Jordan Poole is like, y'all talking Draymond? Y'all talking about Draymond?
Well, I mean, this also goes back to the point because I'm sure there's some of those people. And then Jordan Poole got really good last year, and then it was the Splash
during
Brothers.
The regular season.
And it was during the regular season. I think injury was most of the postseason problem, was it not?
Okay, that's.
But I guess the whole point is he did good enough to where it became the Splash Brothers and the pool party. And now all of a sudden, Draymond's left out literally and metaphorically of the nickname, and they're both coming up on money. That really seems to be like it could be the source of all this because, I mean, we've heard it our whole lives. The old saying about the locker room, every fight in the locker room is about money or women. Like, it usually ends up coming down, when you whittle them down to the purest form, it's usually about a couple of things. And Draymond's been pretty vocal about him wanting that big-time extension, a last big extension probably at the end of his career. And if you're the Warriors, I don't know, like, if you're already a team in the luxury tax and you only got to spend on one, now all of a sudden this becomes a kind of uncomfortable conversation. I'm so mad at myself because Draymond's already won, because the first thing I thought of was, when's the next podcast drop?
Yes. He definitely won because, he's going to be climbing back up the charts after this
Brandon, if he has
incident.
Jordan Poole on that podcast with him, it's going to be at the top. He doesn't run from that, like, albeit it was years later, but he had Kevin Durant on the podcast, and they talked pretty candidly about their relationship and a lot of the things surrounding Golden State. I don't know if everyone involved would be ready to, blow off the video game cartridge in real time and just plug it in for this podcast, but if he managed to coax that out, that's numbers.
But they brought real Love and Hip Hop beef to the podcast, and like some furniture gets moving. Like, I think that might be even better for the podcast. He's like, all right, so y'all came, y'all are Jordan being a little bitch last episode. excuse my language. But yes, I do think that this is the okay. Here, let's just play the metaphorical, because I'm sure it's not apple to oranges. It's not this simple. But if you were the Golden State Warriors and you only had $5 to give to Jordan Poole or Draymond Green, who's getting your money?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, if you're playing long-term trajectory, and that's what this is, depending on the length of some of these, max area extensions or close to that, what Jordan Poole offered you, and the fact that you're going to probably get James Wiseman back finally, and the fact that Draymond, you want to talk about someone who showed signs of wear late in the postseason. I get Draymond's a stat sheet suffer. What he does really translates in the defensive end, but we saw him as a full-blown liability on the court for them offensively. He was a self-check at times during the finals.
But you can't. I understand you can say that, but they still won that finals. So if you can still win a finals with somebody who's self-checked versus the potential of a young player who is acting different around time to get the money, like, I do think that that gives me a little bit of pause, Mike.
I saw Zach Lowe was on. He was on Bill Simmons and was talking and said it would be fascinating to see Draymond Green on a different team at the end of his career. And so part of me loves the prospect of that, just as kind of like an experiment of Draymond Green's value in the way we've always talked about it with a team. But I don't know, man. I think it's interesting. I just really, in this situation, want to know. I always love the thought of, what was the last thing said before a punch got thrown? Like, what's the thing that finally went across? And it's not like I think Draymond's threshold for going out here and getting physical is overly high, especially in a practice setting where, it's not actually going to be a fight. These guys aren't actually going to go at each other. Like, as tough as Draymond is, I don't think he's like, I'm worried about him throwing hands in the parking lot with me tough.
No,
so,
but you gotta let them know you're serious, and I feel like there's I don't know what that is for Draymond to like let someone else know that he's serious. Like, I feel like he probably goes a little bit past the line, most people's line.
Yeah, I would definitely agree on that, but I just want to know what that line was right before that last one.
Well, if it apparently, like you said, and like it was reported, it was specifically about Draymond not getting the money that he wanted. That's what like led to the fight, kind of escalating. But I'm interested in like what Steph Curry said after the thing. If it's just like, oh, this is just Draymond being Draymond, like back in 2016 when I got into it with him because he was mad at me because I was taking shots and I was trying to get my rhythm again, or is this okay? No, Draymond's tripping. Like this is getting a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I want to know the temperature in the room amongst the four ringers at this point.
Yeah, well, and like every locker room bit of friction, everyone knows, right? Like, no one in this situation is probably surprised that it's these two. You can usually feel these kind of tensions simmering, and you're all just waiting for it to boil over somewhere. And for the Warriors, the beautiful part is it's not like this is anything where people needed, like, this is pure fun in analyzing this, because I don't believe that it's anything about their operation can be corroded by this. I think at this point they have shown team-wise, they're going to work through these problems if it takes a closed-door meeting where everyone dog cusses each other and stuff like that. Golden State's been through so much of this stuff, and they kind of get credit for the interpersonal handling of this with the core of the team that they've got for all the team-building reasons they mentioned. So I'm not worried about the Golden State Warriors. This isn't like, what we're talking about with the Phoenix Suns losing to the 36ers while DeAndre Ayton's not talking to the head coach. Like, they have not earned that same benefit of the doubt that Golden State has. This just gets interesting because we didn't know there was history between Jordan Poole and Draymond Green. That had been kept pretty far under wraps. And so I'm wondering now how much else about this situation starts to leak out now that people are hardwired to look at it and see something in the reporting. That's what I want to see next, is if we do get any more kernels on this, or if they're able to stamp out the fire, these guys both get either some sort of like fine or miss a little bit of time at the beginning of the preseason, which who gives a shit, and then they can move on from this.
But, okay, you're talking about moving on. I'm not ready yet because the Kevin Durant, Draymond Green stuff was interesting because Kevin Durant is, top 5 basketball players, maybe top 5 basketball players ever at the end of this thing, definitely in the top 10. And then you got Draymond Green, right? So then with this Draymond Green, Jordan Poole thing, Draymond Green's sitting here like, even if I was an offensive liability during the finals, I am the reason why you have that one ring that you have. And we're sitting here with X amount of other rings. So I just think that there may be something to Draymond Green looking at the young guy who really lucked out by getting drafted by that team in the first place. And it's like, dude, don't bite the hand that feeds you.
But is the hand that feeds you Draymond? Because I feel
Draymond
like
think so.
Well, yeah, I'm saying in reality that feels like one where Draymond standing there doing that behind Steph and Clay, like, yeah,
behind him. I mean,
I'm just saying if we're organizing order of importance in a lot of the Golden State success over the years, Draymond certainly deserves a part of it, but you have arguably the best shooting backcourt in NBA history. And so if I'm going to look at where the skill set's special, yeah, Draymond deserves a ton of credit. I'm not minimizing that, but he's behind, especially for the totality of the Golden State experience, he's behind Steph and Clay.
He may be standing behind Andre Iguodala as well, who's coming back like UD.
Stop.
He's coming back. The point forward is here.
And we're glad that, shout out to Andre Iguodala of the Meadowlark family here. Now all I want to know is what Max Kellerman thinks about that. How he would organize Andre Iguodala's place in this after the greatest soundbite all time. I want Iguodala. It lives in my heart rent-free. Yeah, we'll wait and see. But the NBA sprinkle a little bit of spice into the pot to start the season here.
And I got excited talking about it too. I'm pissed.
I know. It lures you. They got a very potent version of the drug they've been using for a while, man. They can date Days of Our Lives shit. And again, this is like The Masked Singer. The best thing for The Masked Singer was the random news around Tom Brady in the missing camp that we now see very much tied to something else. When Tom Brady said, I'm 45 and I got shit going on, he was not lying. No. Honestly, though, how wild would it be if he showed up on The Masked Singer now?
Mike? And Giselle's in the front row clapping? Woo.
Oh, no. She wouldn't be there, but it would just be a further indication of the things that clearly seem at the heart of this. Where it's like...
I'm just trying to zig and a zag again. Like, that would be a crazy... It was like, it finds out that Fox is using an old clip of Giselle in the audience from
What if she was the Masked Singer?
Ooh.
See?
And then Tom Brady's in the audience.
You got to open your third eye to this kind of stuff.
Wow.
It all just goes back to, man, Draymond, drop the podcast. Because even if Jordan Poole's not on there, we're going to hear about it. And I can already see the promo video cut for it. I'm in. You have got my vote. You have got my listen.
Hey, and he's done this before, double interview. I might want to hear Jordan Poole in the front and then Antonio Brown on the back. I think Antonio Brown on Draymond's podcast. I'd listen.
I would never like to hear from Antonio Brown again. As long as I am alive, I'd be good with that one. So that's your NBA news of the day. We'll get you guys a little bit look at the Factory of Sadness Thursday night football game, maybe. But as we get ready, so again, Jen Karson-Strauss is going to be the next voice that you hear on this podcast. She is a feature producer at E60. She is the director of Truth Be Told, the fight for women's professional soccer, which you can check out on ESPN Plus. It really is awesome. It's an hour and a half, and it is incredibly compelling content. And just some background, if you are not fully familiar with the story that's at the heart of all of this, because you probably saw during this week the Yates report that was commissioned by the former Attorney General of the United States looking into all of the impropriety in this soccer league. This all goes back to a piece that was written in The Athletic. Meg Linehan of The Athletic, back in September 30th of 2021, released a piece that chronicled the institutional failure across the NWSL to protect its players in the wake of accusations of sexual coercion against, it ended up, being multiple prominent league coaches, but the story in this E60 is centered really around one here. Paul Riley was the coach in question who coached for the Portland Thorns and was at the center of a lot of this. He was accused of sexual coercion by Sinead Fairley, who had played for him going back to her time in a different women's professional league with a different team where he had been the coach. She accused him of sexual coercion and then was a part of Coach Riley and Portland Thorns teammate Mana Shim's allegations of this, dating back to a night where they were all out drinking, as this coach was one who routinely blurred the lines between players and coaches, was overly involved in their personal lives, asked a ton of questions about their personal lives, was accused of making comments about people's weight and sexual orientation along the way, and was essentially grooming these women. When you hear the testimony from Mana Shim, from Sinead Fairley, what you hear is a coach that used basically mental warfare to try and break up and build down these women and make them feel dependent on him. And so much of this story is built on a sport making the women inside of it dependent or feel dependent on them, to feel like they cannot speak out, because this was a league that was fighting for its life, fighting for its own place in the world of sports. And it ends with this coach on a night out drinking in 2010 pressuring these two women to kiss each other in front of him so that they could get out of conditioning for the team in the next day. It ultimately led to him sending unsolicited lewd pictures of himself to both women over the course of time. He even invited Mana Shim to a film session in his hotel room and then greeted her wearing nothing but his underwear. And this is the routine pattern of behavior described for this coach and for a bunch of other coaches here. Now, it's also about, we mentioned, and the thing I want everyone to keep in mind for this is because this piece is going to chronicle that Alex Morgan was a teammate of Mana Shim's in the Portland Thorns, and it's her quest to try and help her teammate lodge a complaint about the behavior she's on the receiving end of. What we see so often in these cases, and what's really the crux of this story, is it's less about being able to look at and carve out a bad actor. And in this case, it's a lot of bad actors. There were multiple coaches, GMs, over half the league's head coaches churned out over the last couple of years because of accusations along these lines, whether it's sexual misconduct or coercion, whether it's allegations of racism and misogyny. There was so much of this that women finally felt like they were able to speak up about around the league, and that was after they went through and realized there were no structures in place to protect them. And we see this with what went on with U.S. gymnastics. We see this in the case of Larry Nassar there. We've seen it in plenty of spots along the world of sports where it is entire structures that are supposed to be in place to protect the athletes involved that end up failing horrifically, that end up having organizations like we're seeing now with some of the organizations in the NWSL still dealing with this, because you have people in ownership who were involved in trying to sweep these things under the rug, cover it up. The Portland Thorns head coach, who was accused of all this and fired by the team, still received a glowing review from the team and was allowed to go take another job with another team and continue to win at a high level. It's insane when you internalize all of this. And we see abuse across sports and across gender lines all the time. that show that this is a problem for a lot of people, but I think especially for women, because of the power imbalance in a sport where you have so many male voices in positions of leadership, where so often we see women in sports sexualized and having their bodies that are supposed to be here for athletic purposes reduced to whatever they can offer someone sexually. I think all of this stuff hits even harder for that reason because of that dynamic. And so that's some of the background on this. This E60 ended up coming out the same week that the Yates report is out here, and there's 2 independent investigations going on into this league right now. There's been a lot of changes that I will also be talking about with Jen in this. So again, I know it's a lot of heavy material, but we think this is an important story, especially Absolutely. For a league that is growing in popularity still and has a lot of positive momentum to it. It's important to carve out, as much as we say it's about fixing the structure going forward, and the women of this league have basically themselves gone about the business of doing that. There's still some carving out of the dead weight that needs to happen, and continued reporting like this is going to be a huge part of holding people's feet to the fire, having enough attention on this to make change happen. And I think what Jen, the E60 team, and so many others have done on this end is really important. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, the director of this E60 piece, Jen Karson-Strauss, is going to join us to talk about the state of the National Women's Soccer League. All right, very important conversation here that's been going on this week and has been led by our next guest. Monday saw the release of an independent investigation, one of 2 investigations that have been ongoing. This one commissioned by the U.S. Soccer Federation and conducted by former U.S. Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, which chronicled the extent of abuse, sexual misconduct, and more in the National Women's Soccer League. And for more on that, very excited to talk to Jen Karson-Strauss, who is a feature producer with E60 and directed Truth Be Told, the fight for women's professional soccer that you guys can see on ESPN+. It is phenomenal. It is exhaustive reporting. So Jen, first and foremost, thank you for joining us, and how are you doing in what I'm sure has been a very busy week?
Well, thank you for having me. This is one of those stories that you want to feel good about it when it's over, because it is so much work. Our whole team at E60 and at ESPN really put our hearts and souls into this reporting. The news breaking on Monday certainly made things interesting for us, but it's also one of those stories that it's hard to fully celebrate, right? Because of all of the things that these women have had to go through over not just the last year, but for a really long time. And so, so much of my gratitude is just to the people that were in the film to share their story so that we can share it with our audience and reach as many people as we can.
And the story that you guys chronicles centers around really the entirety of women's professional soccer at the beginning, its formation, the sort of, I guess you could call it the powder keg in the midst of all this, and what went on with the Thorns, Mana Shim, and the abuse at the hands of their former head coach, Paul Riley. For you, what initially drew you to this story? Why was this something that you wanted to be a part of bringing to light?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike. I played soccer my whole life. I played at the Division I level at Pepperdine and with a number of women that play in the National Women's Soccer League and against them. Played against Mana Shim in college. I didn't actually know that till after I sat, when we were sitting down, but there was a lot of connections for me personally. I also have a daughter who I hope participates in women's sports at some point in her life. And as I was taking in this moment that was happening on October 6, 2021, where all the games were stopped in the middle of play. I mean, I watch a lot of sports. I've never seen anything happen like that before, where there's something going on in the middle of a game, where these women were deciding to stand up for themselves and to try to spark this positive change. It obviously doesn't end there with this moment that they have in the middle of the pitch. But when I saw that unfold, I was emotional about it, and I also I had no idea that had been going on in the league. And so for me, as a feature producer, as a storyteller, I knew that at E60 we tell stories like this, and we had a responsibility at ESPN with the platform that we have to be able to do a deeper dive on this story, and not just the NWSL, but like you said, women's soccer in general. That was really, really important to me.
And the background on women's soccer in general, why was that such important context for what ended up happening in the National Women's Soccer League that was a part of this report?
Well, we knew that diehard soccer fans were going to tune into this, but there was also going to be a huge audience that didn't know anything about these stories, that didn't know about women's soccer and maybe didn't even care about it. But we wanted to be able to show people that, you know, there is this history, that after the 99ers won the World Cup, a professional league seemed like a no-brainer. And as you have these first two leagues before the NWSL, there are these bad seeds that are planted really early on. I wanted the viewer to know that this isn't just something that happened. These abusive issues didn't just happen in 2021 in the National Women's Soccer League, and they didn't just start in that league. These have been systemic issues that have been going on for a really long time. And so I wanted to be able to show that. But the other thing that was really important for our production team was to show the lack of professionalism that these women were dealing with. And they were dealing with it because they just wanted to play the game. And that, in a lot of ways, was used against them. They were paid $6,000 a year. They lived with host families. They had, they could have had careers as doctors or lawyers. They went to high-level institutions, but instead they chose to continue to play soccer simply because they loved it. And for a lot of years, that was sort of used against them as a tool, and they didn't have power over their careers or their lives. And we saw that in the WUSA, but especially in the WPS, which was the Women's Professional Soccer League before the NWSL. And because both of those leagues folded within 3 years, when you get to the NWSL, it is kind of looked at as the last hope for a women's professional soccer league. And so it created, in a lot of ways, this culture of silence and this you should just be grateful that you have a place to play type of mentality. And that was a huge part of the problem. And hopefully that changes.
Yeah, I think that shined through really well, that this idea that everyone was made to feel like this thing that they were holding in their hands was so fragile that if anyone moved or did too much, it was going to break, and thus it put this responsibility wrongly on people to stay silent and deal with this. How did that factor directly into what we saw with Mana Shim and Paul Riley at the story that's at the heart of this?
Well, I think, one of the really powerful moments that Mana Shim tells us is even, after she's newcomer of the year in Portland and she's scored so many goals and played so well, once she gets traded to Houston and she asks Paul if he can take her back, once Portland does take her back, she is made to feel like I should just be grateful that I have a place to play. And so many women in the league felt that way, that they couldn't ask for more. They couldn't ask for more money because the league was barely holding on. So, it didn't make the film, but a lot of women did say, if I asked for more money, then what if that was going to hurt the league? And we weren't going to have a league anymore because they needed that money for other things. And so it was a really unfair burden that was put on these women that they shouldn't have had to shoulder.
Along those lines, as you're going through and you're talking to the people involved in this, you're talking to Alex Morgan, who was a friend of Mana's on the team, a really close friend who became an advocate for her when all of a sudden the abuse in this player-coach relationship starts to rise to a point where Mana wants to go forward, wants to start to try and sound the alarms and say, what's going on here can't keep going on. As you talk to all these women, what was the most surprising thing that you guys discovered about the process of this, about what they were dealing with as you started gathering this information?
Yeah, I think when you look at a league that is full of women, women are the employees and the men are the people in charge. I'm fine with a male being my coach. My coaches have almost always been men. I have no issue with that. But the fact that there's no reporting mechanism, there's no policies when that is the set of circumstances is really where there's a problem and where we saw problems. The fact that these women had to search high and low and hunt for somebody to contact when there was harassment going on is it's mind-boggling to me. And then the sad part is once they were able to finally track that information down and they went through the proper resources, that nothing was done about it and that nothing was said about it. The public didn't know about it. And so there has to be more accountability and transparency, I think, moving forward. And I think we saw that there wasn't that in Mana's story. And what Alex Morgan had to go through, the list, Alex clearly had some resources that she was able to try to tap into to get to the bottom of who to contact. But it even took her a massive search to try to figure out who they should contact in order to hold Paul accountable.
Yeah, I think that was among many head-scratching parts for me watching, listening, consuming all of this is the workplace didn't have anything in the way of an HR department. There was no policy. There was nothing for anyone to latch onto here, which in any workplace would be, malpractice, but let alone, like you said, one in which the dynamic exists the way it did inside this league. You talked about accountability. It seemed like no one involved from the lead side, whether it was Lisa Barrett, who was the former commissioner who ended up resigning in 2021 after the initial reporting drops in the early fall of that year here. Were you able to find anyone along the way from the league side of things, anyone who hinted that, yes, we did not do enough in the way that we approach these situations?
Well, one of the insightful conversations that we had was with Megan Burke, the executive director of the NWSLPA, who also played in the WUSA, played in the WPS, who was really trying to make sure that the league did have these policies. And when she was trying to hunt them down, the league had been up and running for 9 years and there was no anti-harassment or anti-discrimination policy. And so the league claimed that they had one. They didn't. One of the things actually that didn't make the cut, Mike, was that Alex Morgan actually told us that she hand wrote policies and worked on it with the players and handed them to the NWSL, and those are the policies that they adopted. 200 players signed the anti-harassment policy, and that is what Lisa Baird and the NWSL ended up adopting as their anti-harassment policy.
So Alex Morgan wrote this down herself and ended up handcrafting this as a report. Just, again, trying to underscore to people the load it seems like was constantly put on the women on the field in this league to go out here and fight for their own place in this ecosystem that all of these other people seem to constantly want to suppress and constantly want to push down is mind-blowing and but sadly not stunning given what you've described in the background of the sport and the way that this was all situated. We did have at the end of 2021 in the theme of accountability, you had 5 of 10 head coaches that were either fired or forced to resign. You had one general manager, Lisa Barrett, resigned as well. What other fallout did we see from what happened, this reckoning in the wake of the protest that you described in the beginning and the reporting that we saw in 2021?
Well, Lisa Levine, who was the general counsel, she also resigned. She's responsible for a lot of this. She was aware, as was Lisa Baird, of the complaints that were brought to her attention. So she immediately resigned. And there's been so much that's come from this. It was so hard to put it into 90 minutes because I feel like we didn't even scratch the surface. It could easily be a 7-part docuseries, and we still probably wouldn't have enough space. I know that was something for soccer fans that they wanted more, and I don't blame them. We certainly did the best that we can to get as much in as we could, but we saw also, like in 2020, there was a coach who was quietly resigned for harassment. Craig Harrington in Utah, an owner was forced to sell because of his racist comments, and that team is now in Kansas City. So that happened, I believe, in 2021 as well, or it might have been 2020. So there was a lot of things that were going on that were brushed under the rug or wasn't widely reported, and so that was something that was really important to us at E60, was to show, like, in what league have you ever seen half of the coaches fired for issues of misconduct? And we felt like we needed to bring that to light.
It's a great point, and for Paul Riley, he was quietly shown the door for the Thorns and then allowed to coach after that at a very high level and continue to go out there and be involved and be around players after what had gone on there. And then now you have this reckoning. Now you have the Yates report that drops this week. There's another report waiting out there. What changes? You mentioned the policy that Alex Morgan wrote herself and outlined. What other changes have we seen since last year that have already gone into effect in the NWSL when it comes to on-play policies off the field and what's kind of come from all this?
Well, I think one of the big things that we didn't really dive into in the documentary was that not only did the women have this moment of solidarity on the field, they listed 8 demands that they had for the league to adopt these new policies and these changes. One of those changes was that they were adamant that they be a part of the interview process for hiring the new commissioner of the league. I mean, Lisa Baird had just resigned because of these issues that she didn't follow up on. The commissioner before that, Jeff Plush, was the one who was told about Mana Shim and Sinead Fairley's allegations and did nothing. So it was really important to the players that whoever's going to take over next, we need to have a seat at the table in interviewing that person. And so Jessica Berman, who you hear at the end of the documentary, is somebody who the players actually helped handpick for this role. They also have their first ever in women's soccer history collective bargaining agreement, which now there's free agency. There didn't used to be that. You could be told tomorrow you just got traded and now you got to take your kids out of school, you got to move your life across the country. And so now there's those things in place. Things really honestly that are so basic to us when we look at when we look at other leagues, when we look at basketball, when we look at the NFL, when we look at any other sports league. I mean, these are basic protections that these women are getting to now celebrate that for us, it's like, that's insane that they didn't even have those things in place. There's more pay now. I mean, it's still not a lot, but it did go up 60%. And so they are taking steps in the right direction. And this investigation, there's another investigation ongoing currently with the NWSL and the NWSL-PA, which is a joint investigation, which is really, I think, one of the first times that's ever been done. And I think that's going to, shed a lot of light too, possibly even on more clubs and more organizations, and hold even more people accountable.
We've seen, as of the recording of this podcast today, when you and I sat down, Thorns owner Merritt Paulson and Red Stars owner Arnon Whistler are both stepping away from decision-making roles with their clubs until the NWSL and the NWSL-PA conclude that investigation that you're talking about here. Haven't officially announced that they are selling their shares in the team or any of that. What more needs to be done on that front now? I heard Sarah Spain, who you and I both know very well on Around the Horn yesterday, who is a minority owner in the Chicago Red Stars at this moment, asked if she believes the NWSL could be salvaged, and she couldn't give a definitive answer on that. So what do you see as far as the trajectory for the NWSL, given everything they've had to weather here?
I think it's a great question. I think there's a lot of fans who are really hurt and really angered, and I totally get that, and they should be. They have every right to be. I don't think, however, that this is a burn it all down situation, because this league is about the players. The players deserve to have a league to play in, and so I don't think that it should be burned down, but I do think it's becoming increasingly more difficult for some of these people that are in positions of power to have the right to make any decisions at all, to be a part of the process at all. I mean, we saw with the Washington Spirit and Steve Baldwin, their owner, he originally was just going to step away. And the players were like, no, that is not good enough. You need to go. And that was another thing that was really important to our team at E60, and including that story as long as we did on the Washington Spirit, was, when have you ever seen a team all post on social media simultaneously an open letter to the owner who's writing your checks to say, we don't believe in you, we don't trust you, and you need to sell. And within 24 hours he did. So I think you might be seeing some of that in some way, shape, or form start to happen if real change doesn't occur at some of these clubs. Portland Thorns and the Chicago Red Stars in particular.
Yeah, I have a feeling, and we've seen that happen in other sports very recently in the NBA with the Phoenix Suns and the sale of the team from Robert Sarver that came largely due to the response there. The players do have enormous power to affect change in this situation. It's just unfortunate that it constantly seems to be falling onto their shoulders in order to do so. Jen, I guess big picture here, overall, as people watch this, and again, everyone make sure you check this out. Truth be told, the fight for women's professional soccer, it's on ESPN+. It is more than worth your time as we continue to get information out about this. What is the big takeaway that you guys hoped viewers who tuned into this, like you said, viewers who may be coming into this with some familiarity with the NWSL, familiarity with just the women's national team when it comes to their consumption of women's soccer, or diehard fans, what did you want people to come away from this documentary having learned?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I feel like, one, I wanted them to see this as a story that's not just about women's soccer players, it's about people. And I wanted that to come through. And our team worked really hard to make sure that that was brought to light. I hope that, whether you're a fan of women's soccer or not, that there's an understanding and an awareness of what is right and what is wrong. What is crossing the line as somebody in a position of power. And hopefully that was made a little bit more clear, because I think for so long, and it's not just even in sports, it's in, work life too, for women, for men, that there's too much of this going on in the world. And we need to, as painful as it is, to reopen these wounds for the brave women that were a part of the story, and women and men who maybe watched this story and had some of their own reflection of their own experiences. I wanted there to be that reflection, as painful as it might be, because I think that's how you create positive change. And I think that's how you start the healing process, is by talking about it, is by showing it, and making sure that the story continues. And that's why I appreciate being on with you today, is that we really didn't want this to be one linear airing at ESPN. We've put so much into this, our time, our resources, that we hope that it continues past this, as the story continues, as the NWSL carries on. They're not going away. We want to continue to bring awareness to not only the league and these women, but to an issue that is really important to pay attention to.
Couldn't agree more, as we see so much positive momentum around this league. And you mentioned, you had 2 expansion franchises. There are so many good things happening for the NWSL right now. It is a good reminder that for so many people, it can be easy to point to 1 or 2 bad actors and think that it's just that. But you guys do a really good job of showing this is systemic. These are people that need help in the rules, and the people that are supposed to be looking out for their best interest. And I think all of that does shine through really, really well in what I'm sure was a very difficult process to be a part of, and a painful one for all of the reasons that you laid out here. Jen, I can't thank you enough. I am sure you have been one of the busiest people on earth in this week, going out as this is released and with the report coming out at the same time. So thank you so much for taking the time. I hope you get to rest at some point, but in the meantime, I hope this message continues to get to all the right people.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Cannot thank Jen enough for giving us time and insight on that front. You heard it. She has had a very busy week and a very important week with the information and the work that she's been a part of. So big thank you to her, and big thank you for everyone for taking some time listening to that. I really think if you're going to listen to 20 minutes of our podcast this week, make that the 20 minutes, make that time you go and spend with that documentary. It really is worth your time. And Brandon, you might be able to use some of the leftover time from Thursday Night Football coming up, because my God in heaven, this seems like a factory of sadness game. You have a dog, so you can appreciate this. I feel like the NFL hit us with the Thursday night pill pocket this season, because they try to they put a little bit of peanut butter on the medicine that we had to take, lead dogging with Chargers and Chiefs on Thursday Night Football, only to follow it up with the Steelers and Browns, but the very sad version. Obviously, last week was a nightmare with the Dolphins and the Tua Tagovailoa situation, and now this week we have got Colts Broncos. And boy, oh boy, if you think that's sad, wait till I tell you about next week and the Washington Commanders and the Chicago Bears.
Mike, before you even get in that far, this is a perfect opportunity to have a horse versus horse mascot thing, and that usually got me going when I was like 8 for games. But now this one doesn't even do it for me now, because now both of these horses are hobbled.
Well, that is true. Limping into this game, you're right, because when you think of the horses for both these teams, Javonte Williams, unfortunately, now out for the year with a knee injury. You've got Jonathan Taylor on the Colts side out this week with a high ankle injury. The offensive line for the Broncos is banged up. I think Billy Turner's questionable. Yep. Quinn Miners is out in this game. The Colts offensive line has already struggled to run the ball this year. And Randy Gregory out for the Broncos as well, which is huge for a Colts offensive line that, especially at left tackle, has struggled to protect the passer. This is going to be a rough one, Brandon. It feels like the under is really the only play at this one. On DraftKings, it's 42 is the total, and for two teams that have really struggled, outside of when the Chiefs just gifted the Colts a bunch of bad special teams turnovers, really struggled to move the ball and score points, and in the Broncos case, not shoot themselves in the foot in the red zone or penalty-wise, it feels like it could be a long night, man.
Oh, a very long night. Like, this isn't apples to apples, but I feel like the Broncos are experiencing a similar like stat line as the Colts. But this is since Chris Ballard hired Frank Reich for the Colts in 2018. Overall record 38-30-1. That one we just saw recently. Playoffs 2 of the 4 years, 1 playoff win, 1 losing season, and 5 different starting quarterbacks in 5 seasons.
Yeah, both of these teams felt like we talked about their offenses like they were the universal solvent. Like it was, hey, you plug a quarterback into this. And Indianapolis had been doing it for a while in the recent run of years, going back to when Phillip Rivers was involved in that team. And then you had the Carson Wentz experience last year, now giving way to Matt Ryan. We've seen them trotting it out. And because for so long it was, you have this monster offensive line, you have Jonathan Taylor, who was an MVP candidate last season, and the defense came alive. Matt Eberflus obviously now coaching the Chicago Bears. But on the other side, the Broncos were the team that we said, man, just if you have someone not named Drew Lock or one of the other many quarterbacks you failed in drafting playing, surely the rest of this offense can work. And there we've seen, one, Russ really regressing at the quarterback spot, but also the value of coaching and how much that's affected that situation.
True.
With Nathaniel Hackett coming over. So it's really interesting now for the Colts, because I think for so long with Ballard there, we gave him a lot of credit for like really prudent front office work. And now it just seems like, man, you guys might have waited too long to spend all that money you've always been sitting on.
And I also think they may have had a little bit of I always say shooting some bail, but the extension of time for them around fans probably was a little bit longer because of Andrew Luck retiring.
Yes.
Like, I think that was a big, everyone was kind of like, oh, well, I mean, look at this. Like, they lost their guy. Like, it's like, yeah, that doesn't happen the way it happened. The way he was lost doesn't happen, but that happens. And the Colts really haven't bounced back from it.
No, and now it's going to be about if the Colts can find a way to identity shift, because right now the thing that they have built themselves on for so long does not appear to be working. They are, by almost any meaningful rushing category, in like the low, like the 20, 21, 23 range of rushing statistics, whether it's yards per game. They've only scored 1 rushing touchdown on the season, which feels wild to say already about a quarter of the way through the season. So probably wouldn't touch the spread on this one. The Colts are getting 3.5. Like, if you made me do it, I'd take Colts plus 3.5, just because I don't think either team has the ability to pull away as banged up as they currently are. The Colts offense, having both their receivers healthy, we saw against the Chiefs, does make a difference. Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce are definitely productive players, and right now their offense needs that relief because they do not have the overwhelming blunt object force on the other side. So everybody enjoy that. Thursday Night Football, which already has a bad reputation, not going to help itself in the 2-week stretch we've got coming up.
No, but I do think that this is the chance, if you guys have been waiting to put your money on Russell Wilson, to do Russell Wilson circa 2013, 2014 things, this might be the game.
I mean, the Colts do have a bad pass defense, and outside of Stephon Gilmore, who we saw step up and make some plays in the Chiefs game, that's been a group that's been given up front, rushing-wise. Shaquille Leonard out for this game too, but that's still, like, they've been without him some of the rest of this year. That's an iron curtain up at the line of scrimmage. You're not going to be able to run the rock very well on them, and that was when you had your starting running back. So you're right. It's definitely the spot to go with Denver's weapons is through the air on this one, because we looked at it, I think, week 2, man or zone. This was a pretty bad football team when it came to defending the pass, and that'll probably hold true in this. So, everybody enjoy Thursday Night Football. In the meantime, Brandon, we have got very, very important business to get to about some big fat bears. So with that in mind, do you know what time it is?
I hit some big hits, and now we're just kind of going a little bit off. I think it works.
I know
the freaks come out at night.
It 100% works. I just was not able to make that leap with you. Shout out to Dane Christ, our friend and former teammate, and maybe the most loyal listener of this podcast on earth. Make sure you guys keep giving Brandon ideas. It is spooky season. He wants to go spooky season theme with this, that, and the third all the way up through Halloween. So, as always, we ask you to download, subscribe, rate, and review Gojo. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Tell Brandon what a good job he's doing with this, that, and the third. And in this case, leave him spooky season suggestions at Gojo Show on Twitter as well. Brandon, let's get to this. And I want to start off with Bobby Wagner. Last time on Dragon Ball Z, we saw Bobby Wagner giving a protesting fan the business as they played the San Francisco 49ers on Monday Night Football. Some guy came down onto the field with a pink flare. Bobby Wagner and Tack McKinley sent him back to the student section. You did good. You tried hard. But at the end of the day, you got to take your ass back to the student section. And now in the wake of that, the fan who was leveled by Bobby Wagner, according to TMZ, has now filed a police report over the incident. The man went to the Santa Clara Police Department on Tuesday following the game, cops tell us, and filed a report. A spokesperson did not reveal any further details. Rep for Direct Action Everywhere, the org that took credit for the scene at Levi Stadium, so I guess the organization that he was out there protesting on behalf of, told us the report stems from us being TMZ, a, quote, blatant assault by 2 Rams players. I think I speak for everyone when I say, fuck that. You got exactly what you deserved going into someone's workplace, running wildly around with a foreign object that Bobby Wagner pointed out. You don't know what that was. I don't know what that pink smoke was. We don't know what guy was carrying here. And you already had security guards who were having a little bit of trouble apprehending the suspect. And so they just helped what was already going to happen a little bit quicker. If you go down, it is the ultimate fuck around and find out moment on the football field, on the basketball court. If you go to someone's workplace, and this workplace just happens to be a violent modern gladiator arena, and you think you're just going to be able to go down there and do whatever the hell you want because you got a cause, nah, buddy. That's not how this works. They barely let the players who work there go out and protest for the causes that they want to support. And you think they're going to allow you to go out here and just do whatever you want? Nah, you must be new here.
No, this TV time, baby. Like, and you lucky it's TV time because it means you got cameras watching you.
They don't even let you on the big broadcast. They only showed your footage on the Manning cast because Peyton and Eli wanted to show your ass getting rocked because they reacted like every other former football player, which was, hell yeah, mess that dude up. Because again, I cannot state this loudly enough. If you go down onto the field and think you're going to make a point or be the funny guy or do something like that, I am rooting for you to get your full ass whooped. I want to see you get rocked in ways that you will remember for the rest of your life. Because again, all of it is a dangerous precedent. In all seriousness, we know stadium security does a good job, but nothing's perfect. And you never know if a fan's going to be down there with something dangerous that poses a threat to a player. And so you got to send a message. This is like booping a dog on the nose when he does something bad. It's just a really hard boop that is going to make you feel like shit the next morning.
Yeah, I mean, and also like we've talked about on this podcast, it wasn't too egregious. Like I don't think it was a tackling drill football. Like, you know, when you like warming up with your teammates, so your offensive
Yes.
linemen have to be defensive linemen, and you just kind of thud each other up and just like really rock each other a little bit. Like, that's what that was. Like,
I was
it
on,
wasn't even full football.
I was on the field before the game at Oregon Stanford last weekend that I was calling, and I was watching the linebackers do their thud up tackle drills, and you saw, and I remembered how much everyone hates warm-ups. And there's the one or two guys down there in a college field that are going to be NFL players that take all this stuff as seriously as you should. And then there's everyone else who's just like, this is more contact sooner than I was ready for. I'm not ready to be hitting people this hard. And so we're all out here like pulling up at the right times and having that brother-in-law agreement.
What about me? My ass is like, I don't need to be sweating right now. I'm going to be cold the rest of this game now.
Yes. It's all I'm doing as two guys that spend a lot of time as backups is going and making the day. Once the sun goes down, now I'm screwed and I'm going to be cold and it sucks. So, yeah, buddy, good luck with that police report here. To the fullest extent, you fucked around and you found out. And I have a feeling you're going to get laughed out of the paint now. Brandon, let's get to that. And that was something that you put on my plate, pun fully intended, is that apparently, according to a new study at Harvard Medical School, the optimum time to eat dinner has been revealed. And a lot of people were making a weird stink about this, so tell me what you think. They said that the eating dinner at 5 p.m. is the magic time if you want to maintain a healthy weight, avoid obesity, shed pounds, all that good stuff on there. They said 5 o'clock is the time here. And they seemed aghast because, as they pointed out, so many people are still either at work or in transit coming home from work. My point is, of course, the study's not about what's practical. It's about what the optimum time is.
Right. Well, yeah, and also, but I also feel like this is I jokingly said a boomer wrote this. Like it's
he wrote this in an article, also like espousing glowing reviews of the nuclear family.
Exactly. It's kind of how like Malcolm Gladwell came out and was like just trashing people working from home and the importance of being a part of a place and how hard you work for a place once your boots on the ground there. I was like, that sounds like somebody who owns a business and needs his Gen Z employees to show up and start working from home. Actually,
that's what people always say. Did a business write this tweet?
Right, exactly. So what my thing is like, yes, obviously, when I'm in Florida with my in-laws and we have that, I say dreaded 5:30 dinner, I get it, Mike. I understand it. Like, I understand the fact that a fourth meal around the time that you would usually have your dinner nighttime meal, like 9. Yeah, like I'm okay sacrificing what is usually dinner time for me as like snack time with the exact same amount of caloric intake. And I'll muster the 5 p.m. But like, that's the thing. Like, no one is able to do this at 5 p.m., Mike. Like, at 5 p.m., my son is coming back from daycare and we got to play hardcore while dinner's getting ready. And it's not a good time.
Well, it's industry specific and it's lifestyle specific because, to your point, kids obviously factor in heavy to this, but also the job. Like, us working in sports media is a job with very inconsistent, chaotic hours depending on where you work. Like, I always joke, if you work on sports media, especially the overnight shift, Robin Lundberg, who used to be my partner on 4 to 6 a.m. Eastern morning radio, first and last, who now works over at SI, Robin used to always come in eating like weird smelling chicken and rice at 3 in the morning when we're getting ready. But it's kind of like airport rules where once you enter the premise on those weird ass crack of dawn hours, reason kind of goes out the window. And if you cracked a beer at that point in time, I wouldn't blame you because it's all fair game, much like when you walk onto the premise at an airport.
Yeah, I agree with that. But also I feel like the morning time is a great time to experiment. Like, that's when you can get a little bit eating for pleasure and for fuel, like in the morning. Because like, this is the Huffington Post article. Tracy Lockwood Berkman says that any time between 9 and 8 p.m. is an ideal dinner time. That's because it gives you an average person enough time to digest before hitting the hay around 10 or 11 o'clock. So I think you just take those hour rules, right? Like, whenever you're naturally going to bed, because when it comes to breakfast, there is no, like, you're just going to keep moving. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
It doesn't matter. That's why pancakes are all breakfast foods. Like, you're just going to burn the shit off anyways.
Well, and it's like all the very common sense stuff you learn as you get older, too, because, again, when you're young, you can eat what you want when you want, and it doesn't really matter. And all the time, I would pound food late. We're trying to gain weight for football, and then you go lay down and go to bed. 33 years of having acid reflux later, I'm like, now, all right, after I eat, I got to make sure I'm upright for a little while. I can't go to being horizontal. I need to go for a little bit of a walk and help aid the digestion process here. Mixing in a little bit of coffee after might also help in that digest. Like, I used to balk it when they would hand you that at the end of meals, and I'm like, oh no, guys, it's a great digestive agent. You know, a little shot of espresso after dinner. It's yes, such a sure.
Don't turn your nose.
It's such a sure sign of being watched, because now I have to be mindful of when and where everything goes into my body, or else I'm just causing myself pain that I actually have to feel now because I'm not 23 anymore.
Absolutely, Mike. It was an episode of Explained on Netflix that changed my behavior around when I basically don't drink any alcohol 2 hours before you go to bed, or else you're not going to hit REM. And if your body's busy digesting, you're not going to hit REM. And guess what, Mike? I'm trying to get my REM sleep out here.
That being said, very few things are going to stop my couple glasses of wine before bed at night. That helps, and that's medication still. Again, maybe I'll cross that bridge once I hit my 40s, but right now in my 30s, my millennial rite of passage is I'm allowed to self-medicate with wine at the end of the night, and none of you can stop me. So have dinner.
Yes.
Long story short is have dinner whenever your schedule allows you to do it. Figure out everything else specific to your body and your lifestyle. Let go and go with God. All those things can be true. Brandon, let's get to the third, though, and really go with God, because brother, it's Fat Bear Week. Boy, oh boy. The most wonderful time of the year. If you are of the unwashed masses and the uninitiated here, Fat Bear Week. Every year at Alaska's Katmai National Park pits a bunch of bears who are getting ready to bulk up for that winter hibernation against each other in a bracket-style challenge to find the biggest, fattest, chonkiest, most wonderful bear. And it's a thrilling process here. You can go on their website. The National Park Service website for Katmai National Park has a full breakdown and bracket for Fat Bear Week. Not only the link to where you can go vote, but a breakdown of all the bears involved in this process. And so, Brandon, we're looking to crown a 2022 Fat Bear champion. I have taken the liberty of going through and reading the bios of all the bears and then linking them up with their NFL comp of choice here. Would you like to hear them to help us pick our bear, Brandon?
Of course I am. Of course I do, Mike. But I want to take some time out to talk about Katmai. Is that how you say it?
I think it's Katmai, Katmai.
Yeah, Katmai National Park in Alaska. If you haven't been to Alaska, you got to get out there. You won't probably go there if you go to this one. If you go to Alaska, you're probably not going to go to this park because it's more south. But, Mike, over 4 million acres, which is between the sizes of Connecticut and New Jersey combined. This is the wilderness that these bears are getting fat in. Like, I just want to give people a full picture. It's like, think about Avatar, and instead of the avatars, you got big fat bears. Go. That
sounds like a way better movie, by the way. I would much rather watch Fat Bearatar than Avatar with all those blue people. But I digress. Bring us Fat Bearatar and CGI him, whatever. Bring back Leo and the Revenant, however you want to try and crossover universes in here. Make it happen. All right. So for anyone at home that is looking to try and pick a bear that you're going to root for during Fat Bear Week, and again, you can go out and vote and check that out, nps.gov/KATMN, and you'll find links that'll get you to Fat Bear Week. Let's start this off. They have some great names too. 32 Chunk is the first bear up on the list here. He is weighed an estimated 1,200 pounds in the fall. He occupies great fishing spots. Despite his fishing skills, he often waits for scraps and leftovers from other bears. At the same time, he does not hesitate to challenge and displace others from their resources if he wants. His range of behaviors demonstrates his opportunistic strategy and his individuality. He is consistently one of the largest and most dominant bears in the falls. Brandon, 32 chunk is the Philadelphia Eagles. Scrappy, consistency, maybe not all the parts that you would first think. Jalen Hurts probably wasn't everyone's first choice at quarterback, but they are physically dominant, imposing in the trenches. 32 chunk, the Philadelphia Eagles of Fat Bear Week.
Yeah, oddly the favorite.
Yes, exactly.
Going into Fat Bear Week.
Exactly. Who would have thunk it? Certainly not us. 128 Glazer. 128 Glazer, one of the larger, more dominant females to fish the falls. She can be especially defensive and assertive bear when she has cubs. This year, she kept her cubs for a third summer, giving them extra time to perfect their fishing techniques and build their skills under her perfection. Brandon, 128 Glazer is the 49ers. One, trying to incubate Trey Lance, who's comparatively green as a football player, and give him time to grow in that system, but also kept Jimmy G around for another summer unexpectedly based on what we had thought for the track record of that team. Large, physically imposing, certainly someone to be reckoned with, but definitely someone who's given everyone involved a little bit more time to incubate.
Absolutely. And definitely playing the long game, which is what the 49ers are doing.
Exactly. All right, 151 Walker is a frequent user of Brooks Falls. He's one of the largest bears to use the river. His size and assertive disposition give him a choice of preferred fishing areas. He's a skilled angler, fishing at the lip of the falls, something that not many large dominant boars do. His range of fishing spots are an indicator of his adaptability and his skill. As a young adult, 151 used to play frequently, but now he prioritizes fishing over play, and his many scars demonstrate the challenges of being a large dominant bear. Brandon, 151 Walker is the Aaron Rodgers-led Green Bay Packers. Skilled quarterback who can make plays few others can. Range of significant others and receivers that indicate adaptability and skill. As a young adult, used to make a lot of the crazy wow Mahomes plays. Now prioritizes playing within Matt LaFleur's offense a little bit more.
I like that. I was thinking Tom Brady, but you're right. Tom Brady never really played.
Tom Brady comes later. Trust me. We have plenty of room for Tom Brady, the Patriots, in that group here. 164 is the next bear up. All you need to know about 164 is their preferred fishing spot is the base of the falls, sandwiched between the lip and the jacuzzi. 164 is the Jacksonville Jaguars because they have a pool in their stadium. And as they go on to say here, this guy has gone on because of his technique and location to get the resources without many confrontations. The Jags have also gotten what they needed without much confrontation this year because the AFC South sucks ass. So 164, Emerson Lotzia's Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, definitely under the radar type of bear.
Definitely. 335, Brandon. 335 was emancipated by her mother, 435 Holly, who we will get to this spring. Subadults, who are essentially the teenagers of the bear world, rank lowest in the bear hierarchy. They face some of the toughest challenges and have to learn how to navigate the world without mom for the first time. In the beginning, 335 struggled with the separation and seemed quite skinny, often followed for 435 Holly down the river. Brandon, 335 is the Jets. Lowest ranking in the bear hierarchy, emancipated by their mother, the Patriots, when Tom Brady left the conference and struggling to try and put weight on before the winter.
Yeah, Mike, this is just a sad story. You're right. I'm rooting for all the subadult bears out there.
Well, Brandon, let's get to Mama Bear on this because 435 Holly was the 2019 Fat Bear Week champion. If you remember, the Patriots were the 2019 Super Bowl champions. 435 Holly has a wide range of fishing spots, especially when she has cubs. She's an experienced mother of 4 litters and is best known for adopting 503, another bear, in 2014, and raising him along her own spring cub. While adoption does occur in the wild, it's rare to witness. She is now back as a single sow where she's gained substantial weight without needing to allocate resources. Brandon, 435 Holly, is the New England Patriots. Experienced coach of multiple championship outfits, known for bringing on aging veterans and getting them to rings, a pseudo-adoption of sorts, and returned single without Tom Brady, gathering significant resources after last offseason's free agent spend.
Yeah, absolutely right. I was thinking about, Randy Moss and all these other people that came and found their success with the Patriots short term. That's a little adoption.
Yep, that's just modern bear adoption is all that is. 480 Otis, Brandon. 480 Otis was the Fat Bear Week champion in 2021 and also in 2014, 2016, 2017. He's missing some teeth now,
Otis,
but still very good at fishing, put on significant weight every year. He returns to falls looking better and healthier than last year somehow. As an older bear, he yields space to more dominant bears, but successfully uses more patient strategy, employing a sit and wait method to conserve energy that's so valuable when trying to gain weight for the winter. It should be obvious, this is the Tom Brady Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Multi-time champion, somehow seems to defeat Father Time, comes back and essentially peaks in the postseason every year and is always a factor.
Honestly, Mike, this is spot on because one thing we haven't mentioned about this wonderful site, if you go there and look at these fat bears, if each picture of the bear has a scrolling method where you can see the bear when they were thin, and the weight that they've put on, how much they've gained if you slide back and forth. Mike, this is one of those Tom Brady ones where he looks the same age in these last couple of years.
Yep.
Like, this bear looks like he's been the bear for the last couple times where you've been graded for your bearness.
Yeah, Otis has been that bear. He is the bear of an era, so to speak, around Fat Bear Week, which leads us to some of the other challengers here. 747 up next was the Fat Bear champion in 2020. Mind the years on these championships. Due to his large size and assertive disposition, he has now ascended to the top of the bear hierarchy at Brooks Falls. High concentration of salmage, large number of bears, and so to minimize conflict, they have a hierarchy where the most dominant bear gets the best fishing spots and mating opportunities. 747's size alone is enough to intimidate most bears to give up their space. His dominance combined with his fishing skills allow him to build up substantial fat reserves for the winter. Brandon, 747 is the Mahomes-led Kansas City Chiefs.
Ooh, yes.
Skill combined with sheer intimidation gets most people out of their way pretty early. They are an absolute titan and won the Super Bowl in 2020.
I love it, Mike. This bear looks serious. He looks big. He almost looks like Andy Reid in a blanket. So shouts out to this man. This bear man.
Andy Reid would make a great bear for what it's worth. Brandon, 854 divot, is up next. In 2014, she briefly had 2 yearlings. Those are little babies, but shortly left after that. When she returned, she had 1 cub and an illegal wolf snare around her neck. Park rangers had to remove the snare, but 854 still has the scars, a reminder of the impact of our presence and the challenges base fares beyond the boundaries. Despite those adversities, 854 continues to be resilient and successful bear. Brandon, 854 is the Detroit Lions, our Detroit Lions, who at one point in time did have full cupboards of skill players, great quarterback in Matthew Stafford, had to wear the wear and tear of that. It was a particularly physical and brutal era for the Lions, but somehow they have responded through adversity, are resilient and successful under Dan Campbell.
Responding with grit.
Speaking of grit, 856, one of the most dominant bears in the falls. These are, by the way, all bios on the website. His only real competition is 747, who, remember, the comp is the Kansas City Chiefs for 747. 856 is aggressive and protecting of fishing spots. His intimidating demeanor helps him maintain long-standing rank in the hierarchy. Unlike many male bears, he's got relatively few scars, a sign that his presence alone is enough to deter physical alterations. He won't shy away from contact if it's to his benefit. Brandon, 856, the Buffalo Bills. 747 and 856, two absolute titans, both who are intimidating enough to get most challengers out of the way and really only have each other to worry about.
I like that, Mike. 856. That's a bad boy. I've all these bears. Like, some bears are cute. The two juggernauts are the ones that I'd be afraid of.
100%. Which leads us to the final two. 901 is independent and mature. She was observed charging bears that tried to play with her and actively defend her fishing spots as a subadult. As an adult, she still displays a lot of the independence and disposition with her successful fishing season, but she is exploratory and occasionally mischievous. Brandon, 901 is the Baltimore Ravens. A front office who has consistently done things their own way, a head coach that's not afraid to be an independent thinker and go out there and be aggressive in decision-making, and Lamar Jackson, who is occasionally mischievous with his incredible ability on the field. I think it adds up, and all of these things are a real compliment, Brandon.
No, I know, Mike. I just don't see them as a compliment because if you're looking at 901, She was really small, and she gained a lot of weight, and she looks great, but she doesn't seem to be getting any of the wins or even getting any wins in the playoffs, which made me think of her more mainly as the Chargers, as like a formidable, like, you know, just looks like they could do a lot of damage on paper, but in all actuality, not getting any rings. But yeah, you're right. It's probably the Baltimore Ravens.
Yep, and Lamar Jackson did gain weight going into this season. So Lamar Jackson, a fat bear himself. Which leads us to the final bear, 909, who is a cub. 909, the cub of 909, I should say. 909 is the bear.
Yes,
this is 909's
go.
cub. Often found with her at the walls. Bobs her head fishing the same way that her mom does, which is awesome. Already been seen catching fish on her own in the river, which is great accomplishment for a bear of her age. This year she had an injury to one of her paws, but recovered quickly, demonstrating how resilient bears can be. And as the season progressed, she displayed increased independence as well as socialness with other bears, including playing with her cousin's 910's cub. Brandon, 909's cub is last year's Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow recovering from an injury, young, ahead of schedule, ahead of their years, really social, the darling of the media, the way Joe Burrow and that team so many were, the gritty, Joe Burrow's wonderful new teeth, it all adds up here. 909's cub, Joe Burrow and the Bengals from 2021.
Okay, Mike, now who are we voting for as a podcast?
So,
because you can go onto the website anytime this week between October 5th and October 11th, vote daily, anywhere between 8 p.m. and 5 p.m. We have to crown the Fat Bear Week 2022 champion.
So I would say this, obviously, love the Jags and Lions, rooting for them spiritually here. So that would be 164 for the Jags, who likes hanging out in the jacuzzi. For the Lions, it would be 854 divot. But my Super Bowl pick for this year was the Kansas City Chiefs. And so I feel like I'm probably going to pick 747, an absolute unit, to be the winner of Fat Bear Week.
Okay, let me scroll back. 747.
I will post all of these with the podcast so that if for whatever reason you're a sick bastard and you want to play along, you too can pick a favorite bear for Fat Bear Week and go out and try and support that bear's cause.
Yeah, I like 747, Mike, but I think I'm going to put my money on I really want to put it on one of the ones that has names, but I feel like they're not as contending as much as the number where. So 856 is my bear, Mike. Who's the comp for that?
That is the Buffalo Bills, Brandon. So you've gone directly with my AFC rival and the Super Bowl favorite. So yes. A great pick there. So Brandon has gone with 856, a.k.a. the Buffalo Bills. I've got 747, the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, we'll post a list of all the bears and their NFL comps. If you're looking to try and find a bear to root for, you can check out the pictures on this website. It is incredible. We appreciate you guys, Brandon.
I would say feed your algorithm with this time, because, you know, every time you're online looking at stuff, you're telling your phone and your computer what you like and what you want to see more of. Get into these bears.
Honestly, wholesome bear content for the algorithm in a world where I don't know what you've been looking at on your phone. I don't want to know. Clear your browser history, unless it's just bear stuff. And I'm talking about the BEAR bear stuff. Speaking of bears, Brandon, we appreciate everyone bearing with us during this podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review Gojo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review with your paws. Make sure you check out the DraftKings YouTube channel and the Gojo with Mike Golick Jr. tab on there, where you can see our smiling faces, our guests, and everything else courtesy of the fine folks in the visual department at DraftKings. Thanks so much. Enjoy the Factory of Sadness Thursday night football game. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.